the cloud. The robot lady said we're ready, so let's go. All right, so I'm going to share the screen. It wouldn't be a Zoom meeting if I didn't tell you I was sharing my screen. So let's see, first things first. Welcome to the budget process demonstration. This happens every year, and it's for budget owners and budget reviewers, though we have separate sessions for both. And today's is for budget owners and aliases, because any aliases you set up are going to have the same access as budget owners. So it's all very cohesive. So first things first, if you are a budget owner, you should have gotten an email from Pat Castellani saying, hey, you're a budget owner. Here's the timeline of events in regard to budget processes. You should have also received an email just in general from me about monitoring budgets in the portal, and also just about the budget documentation and these trainings. And you'll also know you're a budget owner if you try looking for the Google folder that we will be looking for, and you can find it, then you know you're a budget owner. If you cannot find it and you do believe you are a budget owner and everything else checks out, definitely email budget2022@marywood.edu. That's where all the budget related questions for fiscal year 2022 should go. So yeah, it's a nice place to be. I'll put it in the chat though, just so you know. If I could get that up. Chat. I can't, so we will continue forward. Even tech people have problems with Zooms. That's just how it is. So first things first, all things being said, if you are a budget owner, if you want to go find your Google Drive, you could do so right through your Gmail. You can also go to drive.google.com, and that would bring you to the same place. But I like going through the email because I have multiple Google accounts. So you can kind of tell if you do, if you click on the top left, I have the help desk one and also the workshops account. So whenever you click on the Google Apps icon from a certain account, it opens up the apps for that specific account. So if I want to find the budget folder for my Kowaleski email, I want to make sure I am in that email first. That's just something I do to make sure I'm in the right place, but you can do it however you like. So I'm going to click on the Google Apps icon, and the Drive icon is usually right towards the top. So if you just click on Drive, it opens right up. And there are a couple different places to look at on the left, but where we're going to go is in the Shared With Me section, because the Google folder we are looking for has been shared with you by the Budget 2022 account. So it's not going to be in your main drive, it's going to be in Shared With Me. And I'll explain why this is important when we get into it. So your Shared With Me section may look like a whole bunch of nonsense, because mine does until I sort it. It's pretty much just defaulted to show you everything recent that has been shared with you. So you will probably find that folder in your recent, so right towards the top, because it has been shared with you within the last 1 or 2 weeks. But if you don't see it immediately, you can always sort by name, and it'll put all the folders at the top of your Shared With Me section, which is super, super nice. So to do that, you'll probably see something like most recent or most recently shared with me up here in the top right where mine says name. And if you click on it, you can do it by share date, which is probably what yours is sorted by, last modified, and you can see the other two. But if you do it by name, then all of the folders go to the top, and you should look for something that has your department name. So in my case, because fiscal was so nice to share it with me, I have the fiscal folder right here. And in the past, you may have noticed that there was like the department number and the department name. So if you see those are probably from the past, but you do want to find this year's department folder. And actually, the way to figure out if it's this year's, super easy, is if you click on the little I button in the top right. So usually it'll look like this. And when you click on the I button, it opens up these details. And if you click on the folder you're looking at, so in my case, this fiscal folder, it shows me who owns it. So Budget 2022 is the owner, so that means it's the newest one. Whereas if I click on this one, the owner is Budget 2019, so that's an old one. It's not what we're looking at today. So the fiscal folder is correct because I clicked on the little I button and it showed me these details, and this little icon here is for budget 2022. So that's how I know it's for this year. So I'm going to double click on that. And I open it up and I have a Google Sheet for PT salary requests. So this is where you fill out the salaries for your part-time, your adjunct overload, your seasonal student workers, that kind of deal. Usually I go over this first because you then put in the totals from this Google Sheet into Colleague. And there are different object numbers detailed in each section of the sheet that tell you where to put that total. So it's important, in my opinion, to go to this one first, unless you're just not ready to look at salaries, which is totally fair. But just know that the totals from this Google Sheet do then go into Colleague, which we will look at in a little bit. So the Google Sheet is just like an Excel sheet, except we're going to double click on this. And as you fill it out, it automatically saves, and it is shared with the Budget 2022 account, so they already have access to it. So you don't have to worry about sharing it back with them. They already have it. So what you get when you open it up is you get this nice little description at the top, because our first tab is the Adjunct Overload tab. And you can see there are three. We have Adjunct Overload, Seasonal Student, and Overtime. So up here at the top, it says that these budgets, and it tells you the object numbers, so 51022 and 51023, just estimate the budgets needed for adjuncts and overloads for these semesters. So you kind of look at them and you go forth from there. It goes from summer 2, 2021, so the second half of summer, all the way through to summer 1 of the following year. So second half of summer to the first half of summer in the next year. And then as you go down, you just fill out the blank areas. So we have department name. So you would just kind of click on that cell and just start typing, just like you would in an Excel spreadsheet or any other Google sheet. You'd also put in your department number. So if you don't know your department number, I'm pretty sure you could email fiscal. I know for myself, if I ever want to look up that number, I kind of just go into the portal, into the budget selection with history area, because it shows you the 6-digit budget number, department number. But if there's a better way to do that and you know it, then feel free to share or use it yourself. But the department number is here as well. But arguably, the most important part is this whole area down here where you actually put in your estimates and the information. So first we have the semester column, which is a nice handy little drop down. So if you click on the little drop down arrow, it shows you the semesters that were mentioned in the beginning of the description. So if you have a certain amount of adjunct/overload working in this current, summer 2, 2021 semester, you type in the count, and then the rate, and then it totals up automatically. So you can see when I click on total, it has a formula attached to it. So you don't have to worry about typing that in yourself. As long as you fill out the count and the rate, it'll give you a total automatically. And then you can click on type to actually detail what type of workers these are. So is it adjunct, overload, is it a summer, bonus, other, that kind of thing. And then any comments or justifications. So here's where you will do your justifications for these different tabs. You are more than welcome to copy and paste whatever you put in here into the justification form in Colleague, which we will see in a few minutes. But you're more than welcome to just kind of Control-C or right-click copy whatever you type in here into Colleague as well, because we like to see justifications in Colleague too, just so when you run the report at the end, all of these things I'm saying, we will go over. When you run the report in the end, you will see the justification notes there too. So it's nice to have everything just kind of, put together. Though the nice thing about the justifications in this Google Sheet is that they're individual for each row. So for every certain amount of adjuncts we're requesting in summer 2, we are putting in justifications for why we need that many. And then the same for the amount of overload we need for a different semester, and this is why. So this gives you a chance to kind of expand on the reasons you might need some of these positions instead of just dumbing it down essentially for Colleague, because there is some space in Colleague to write things, but you can't really write a novel about it. So just wanted to throw that out there. But just like this total column that totals the count and the rate, all the way at the bottom here, we have the total for everything. So it sums up the entire D column here, and then it gets you a total, and you can just stick it right in the corresponding object codes in Colleague. So you would just fill out this first one if it applies to you and whatever department budget you have control over. And then you can continue on to the next tab. So the next one would be seasonal student. So I feel like a lot of people will end up using this one because it's for work studies, seasonal/student employees. So this is not for grad assistants. So you do not use this form for grad assistants at all. It is just for seasonal/student employees. And it's the same kind of deal as the previous tab. You have your department name field that you just click on and then start typing. And then you have your department number, as I mentioned before, but there are a couple different columns to look at down here. So we have position title. So what would be the title of the person you're expecting to, have working in a certain like seasonal or work study, tutor, note taker, those kinds of things. So you put in the position title as it is officially. Then you choose the type of employee it is, whether it's a work study or a tutor, a note taker, or something else. And then the number of employees you expect to have, the rate, which is $7.25. It is there, Carolyn. I don't know why I didn't see that before. But the rate is $7.25. You may see this little note pop up. It'll have this little black triangle in the top right that'll tell you that there is a note to look at. So mine says that the rate for work studies is $7.25, and other rates should be justified in the comments column, so all the way over here. You have average hours, and then average number of weeks they will be working, and then it automatically totals. So you can see there's a formula here. It totals, and then as before, it'll total in the total request area for you to then put in Colleague, and this object number is 51032 or 5105, like that area. You could also, if you know the names, put them here, the employee name, and then of course the comments and justifications for that position. So it's kind of self-explanatory, but if you do have questions as you're filling it out, feel free to contact me or Carolyn, and we should be able to help you. And then the final tab is the overtime tab, and it has the same columns that we've seen so far. We have position title, the number of employees, the regular hourly rate, which is a little bit different than the other tabs, but the same idea, average hours, average number of weeks, and then the total that adds up at the bottom. And any employee names that you can name, and then any justifications you have for the overtime in this row. So are there any questions so far? Anything I can help with? And you can stick them in the chat too. I will figure out how to open it. I don't know why it's not opening, but it's fine. Things happen. Okay, so if there are no questions, I will continue, but I did just want to point out this Google Sheet. It's super easy to fill out, and like I mentioned before, it's already pre-shared with the Budget 2022 account, so you don't have to share it again. So it's kind of nice. When you're done with it, you can just X out of it, and it's saved automatically, like I said, so you don't have to worry about losing any information. Just make sure you have an internet connection when you're filling it out, because that's kind of what Google is based off of. So just make sure you have that. So we've talked about our Google Sheet, and we've done that. Just like in general, the Google Sheet is due, I believe it's January 15th. I think you have through January 15th to fill out all your numbers. So if the Colleague form is due then, so is the Google Sheet. So just keep that in mind. And if you are also a budget reviewer, the reviewing process is through or due January 31st. So we have until the end of January as a whole, but the budget owners and aliases have until January 15th. And I just mentioned the word alias, which reminds me, if you need to assign aliases or you have been an alias in the past, you will need to be assigned again. And the way to assign an alias is to email budget2022@marywood.edu and put in the subject alias dash and then your department number. And then inform the budget account that you want to set so-and-so up as an alias, and then as an alias, they will have access to this Google Sheet and Google folder, so they'll be able to fill out the information there, and they'll also have access to the colleague forms. So if you have been an alias in the past, it does not carry over. You do have to apply for it again, and it has to be the budget owner who applies on your behalf. So I just want to make sure that's clear. So if you do not have access to it and you believe that you are an alias, just double check with the budget account. Someone will let you know whether you are and whether you need to be reassigned. So Google is done. Next part is Colleague. And this really isn't too bad. Colleague has a bad rep, but this is actually pretty easy to do. So do not worry about Colleague or Colleague's part in this whole budget process. It's super simple. So first things first, where do we find Colleague? So I'm going to add a new tab here and go straight to the Marywood website. I feel like that's the easiest way to look for it if you've never entered Colleague before, never looked at it. So what I'm going to do here is go down to Tech Help at the bottom of the Marywood homepage. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You click on Tech Help, and even if you're on any other Marywood site page, you will see this gray bar and Tech Help will be there. So you don't have to be on the homepage. It'll be anywhere on the Marywood website. So I'm going to click on Tech Help. And then on the left, we're going to scroll down until we see useful links. So click on that. And it's handily right here at the top. It is the preferred production 5.13. So production is the operative word here. All the other ones are test servers, which you may be able to log into, but as seen by these dates at the end of each title, they are only as current as these dates are. So this app service one, it's only as current as May 26th of 2020. And that's just because we like to test things, make sure things work, and not break the system. So for your budget inputting, you want to go to production 5.13. So we're going to click on that. And I highly recommend that you bookmark this page, especially if you don't feel like inputting your budget numbers all at once, because that might be a little overwhelming. So if you want to go back into it, I highly recommend bookmarking it. You can see I have it bookmarked up here. So all I have to do is just click on this colleague link and it brings me right here. So to bookmark, just real quick, if you use Chrome, there's a little star over here on the right, and you just click on it, and you can then decide where in your bookmarks it's going if you have some folders. Same with Firefox, there's a blue star you can click, and it adds it to your favorites, which then you can put on your bookmark bar right here, as I have, so that you can just click on it whenever. Or I've also seen people favorite the useful links page so that they can get to this page and then go to Colleague, or if they want, they can go to Smart Catalog or the report server. So they have easy access to this little hub of links. But all that being said, for Colleague, you just have to sign in with your Marywood U credentials, and that would just be the same as your PC credentials. So for me, that's ATUS08, though if you are more recent and more new to Marywood, it's probably just the first part of your email. So then you type in your password and click login. It'll have a couple little messages up at the top, like authenticating and then loading favorites and such. Usually loading favorites is the last one. And then you're in. So you have this message, you just kind of accept the confidentiality statement and it goes away. And this is the default version of Colleague. This is what it'll look like every time you log in. So this is not an error message at the top. It just means that you haven't started searching for anything yet. So don't worry if this is what you see. It's what everyone else sees too. So just a little run through of Colleague in case you've never seen it before. We have a couple different icons at the top. So the first one is this person icon, which we will not be using for the budget process. So, you know, log this information in the back of your head, but we will not be using the person search at all for the budget process. So person search lets you search for a person, and you can tell that you're in person search because the person over here is in light green, and also the search bar says search for a person. If you want to search for a form, which is what we'll be doing for the budget process, you click on the page icon, and then the text changes to search for a form. So whenever you're searching for something, be it a budget form or That's probably all we'll be doing for the budget process is looking for budget forms, but just make sure you have search for a form in that search bar, because otherwise you will not find it. So just keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind as well is if you've done this in the past and you favorited your forms for the budget process, that is awesome. You can just click on the favorites icon, and I have not saved them, but if you did, you will see them on the right, and you can just double click it to open it instead of typing them in. So just a little note in case you thought ahead and you favorited those forms, but if you didn't, no worries. Because I actually put them in the documentation this year, so you'll be able to look them up on the document as well as just listen to me say them and see me put them in, and then do it yourself. So searching for a form, there is one step you need to take additionally if you are an alias. So I am technically an alias for this training, so I will show you exactly what you need to do if you are an alias. Now this process, this form needs to be accessed every time you log into Colleague to do anything towards one of the budget forms. So every time I log into Colleague and I want to start working on a budget form, I need to do this step first. And that is type in BAAS for budget alias assignment. This needs to happen every time because the system needs to recognize you as an editor of a budget form. So you need to assign yourself as an alias first. And that isn't to be confused with assigning yourself as an alias through the budget account. This is just after that has been done, then you can go in here and continue forward with the budget process. So BAAS, and then click the magnifying glass or click the enter key, whatever you're more comfortable with. And then the budget ID lookup is FY22. So every time anything in this budget process asks you for a budget ID, it is FY22 because it indicates the end of the fiscal year that we are preparing requests for. So FY22 and click OK. So it comes up with my budget alias ID, which is a good sign because it means that you have been recognized as an alias in the system. So if this comes up as an error, that means you need to be assigned as an alias. If you get this page as I'm seeing, that means everything's good. So what you need to fill out is this first white field that says assign or reinitialize. And all you have to do is just put the letter A in there and then click on the next field. So A just represents assign alias, which is what you want. And then the budget officer ID is just something you can look up very simply by clicking the period button 3 times. So just type in ellipsis in the little field here and click the enter key. And I only have one budget officer ID to select, as you probably will as well. So you just double click on that budget officer ID and it auto adds right in for you. So you can see it added in 30200 because I'm an alias for Pat Castellani. So once you've done that, it'll ask you to update, which just means it wants to update the system to let you edit the budget forms. So click update, and now we're back to where we were, and that's a good sign. So the next step is for everybody, whether you're a budget owner or an alias, this is where you go to input your budget numbers. Now there are 2 forms, but you only need to use one. One of them is RWLI, which stands for Officer Worksheet Line Items, and that is only if you have one budget, because it'll automatically open that budget for you and you can start working. Now, if you're someone who has multiple budgets and you need to work on and across multiple budgets, then you might want to go to RWLI, which is Responsibility Worksheet Line. And this is also where the budget reviewers will go, but for our purposes today, we're talking about inputting the requests instead of reviewing them. So RWLI is for if you have multiple budgets, though you can also do this one if you only have one. The only difference between the two is that when you type in RWLI and click the magnifying glass, it gives you the option after you type in FY22. After you type that in, you will get a selection of budgets to choose from that you have access to. So if you have access to multiple budgets, you will see a list of budgets and you can double click on the one you want to work on. So even if you only have one, and you don't want to use OWLI just because you don't want to, you should still be able to see your budget and then double click on it and it will open up. So mine is having a time right now. So, okay, there it is. It waited so graciously for me to finish my diatribe. So you can see, since I'm an alias, I'm only authorized for this first one. But there are others, because I'm an alias for Pat Castellani, he has all these. Or they may be all the ones that I can see. Either way, I'm only going to click on the first one. But for your purposes, if you have multiple budgets, just click on the budget you want to work on at the moment. So you can either click it once and then click on open at the bottom, or you could double click it to just open it up. So this is what you will see whether you go into OWLI or RWLI. They both look the same. As I mentioned before, RWLI just lets you pick from your budgets. OWLI just opens it up automatically. So they look the same when you get inside. So we have 4 different columns here that are very important. The first one is this description column, which has every budget line item, every object number in the budget that you selected. So this is where you'll have a description of that line item and the detail button to continue on to the justification notes and such. But that's just a column to look at. You don't have to edit it. I don't think you really can, to be honest. The second column is basic amount, which is actually where you put your budget requests for fiscal year 2022. So all of these white fields indicate that you can edit them. So once you click on one, you can edit it, add your number, and then move on. This third column is actually for fiscal year 2018, and the fourth column is for 2019. So I usually tell people to change this C1 by clicking on the little drop down and change it to C3. And doing so brings up the numbers for this current fiscal year. So you have the fiscal year that's happening right now, and then you have last year. So it's a good thing to kind of keep the last 2 years up, though if you did want to see from fiscal year 2018, you're more than welcome to switch back to it at any time. You can always go back to C1. You can even put it over here in this column. You can really do whatever you like. But I usually recommend putting the current fiscal year up by clicking C3, and then you can see everything that was approved for this current year. So it's kind of a good model going forward. So in a little bit of words, really all you have to do is just click on the white field and type in your number. And if you do not have an amount for a certain line item, just put in the number 0. Don't leave it blank, just put in 0. Use the past 2 years as your guide. If there are zeros there and you still don't need any money in that section, then just put 0. Don't leave it blank. Now you'll notice I only have 5 lines, and I definitely have more than that. If you click on any of these fields, as I just did, to type in this 0, you'll see that a little page scanner pops up at the top, and I have 7 pages actually. So there are 5 lines per page, and if I click on this right arrow, I go to the next page, and I can fill out my amounts there as well. So you kind of just keep going through your pages, filling out your numbers, and you can save at any time. So there's no need to finish your numbers all at once if you don't want to. The save button is here to save you wherever you're at. You would just click on the save button and then the update button to save out of your form, and then log out if you need to, come back after lunch, do some more. So you can always save and return. I'm going to actually return to editing because I'm not done yet. But I did want to mention that there is an additional step that you will need to take if you're requesting money, which obviously you will be. There is this nice little detail button to the right of these white fields. And there's one next to every single one, but the most important one is the one to the right of the basic amount column. So I'm going to actually forward myself to a different page, and I'll make note of it so that I can tell Carolyn that it's not a real number. Department office supply is always my go-to because everyone has that. Everybody does. So if I put in a certain amount here based on the one from last year, maybe I'll do 4,300. So I type in my number, we're all good. We get a nice little change at the bottom here, all good. Now, if I want to justify that, as I should, I think we want it so that you justify everything to the best of your ability, of course. You would just click on this little page icon and you get a selection of two forms to open. And the one you want to open is the justification notes, BJNS. And that is in the documentation as well, but it's the one that says justification notes, so it's pretty self-explanatory. You can double click on it, or you can just click OK at the bottom. I'll double click on it. And it keeps your RWLI open, as you can see on the left, but it opens up the justification notes form for you to fill out for the specific line item, as you can see here, and amount that you just requested. So you can see 5 lines here, which is a little awkward. So what I usually recommend is clicking on this little page icon once more, and it opens up a nice large text box for you to type in. So if you have justification notes from last year that you saved and you just want to use them again, copy and paste them. You can also just type them out in Word and then copy and paste them in here if you don't like typing in Colleague, which I totally understand. Or you can type out your justification notes right here in Colleague. And once you're done, you just click Save. And it spreads out your text across however many fields you need. So it cut it between SO and DZ, so it'll appear more logically in the report that you can run later, which we will talk about. But this is how it'll look. So I usually recommend doing the detail button to get that full text box so that it then spreads across the different lines on its own. And you don't have to worry about character limits or anything. So once you've typed in that justification note, that's pretty much all you can do here. So you will click on the Save button and then Update, and it returns you to RWLI. So now you can see there's a nice little J in this line 26 because I justified it, and I also have a C because I changed the number from a blank to a number. So just make sure that all of your fields that have amounts in them have a nice little J on that line so that you know that you justified it. It's also nice for when you save and then come back to it at a later date or time, you can tell what you've justified already instead of having to click on the detail button and then click on BJNS and then reading it. You can just see that you've done it, and it's fine to move on from there. Another thing I've seen people do, it's totally optional, but if you prefer it to running a report in Colleague, if you've done that before, you either love it or hate it, you can do this little Excel spreadsheet. And doing so will actually make an Excel spreadsheet of your amounts that are here in RWLI. So once you're done, or even before you're done, if you want to pre-fill them out here in Excel, you can. It kind of opens like this with your GL number on the left, any justification notes, except it just puts the J from the Colleague form. Same with the C here. We have a dollar amount here, and then the past years as I had it set up before. It's a little hard to read if you're not sure what you're looking at, but some people prefer doing this so that they have the numbers next to the numbers that were previously approved and then the numbers from the year before that. So if you wanted to kind of take a digital snapshot of the numbers that you entered for this go around, you can definitely do the Excel spreadsheet export. One more time, it's just right here on the little page scanner. It's the little clear green box with the X in the center. Not your typical Excel icon, but when you hover over it, it does say export all rows to a spreadsheet. So that is an option if you're at the point where you want to review your numbers or keep it for future use. So before I go on to the report, are there any questions? And again, you can unmute yourself if you need to. You just hover over your little video icon and click unmute, or you can go down to the bottom left and unmute the microphone. But if not, like I said, interrupt me. But if not, we can go to DWSR, which is the last part of this. Usually we tell the budget reviewers to run DWSR because it's just literally a report of the justification notes and the numbers for this current year. But I also think it's nice for the budget owners and aliases to run it as well, because then you have a digital snapshot of what you've requested versus what gets approved. And it may be the same, but honestly, it's nice to have, especially going forward into next year. If you're still in the same position with the budget, you can look back on what you did request and why you did, and you'll still have those notes. Because it's important to note that you don't have your justification notes from last year, unless you ran DWSR or you saved them in some other manner. So there's no way to go back and look at last year's justification notes unless you run this report. I mean, you can talk to fiscal services. Carolyn can attest that. I'm sure she's looked it up for many a person before, and it is possible. But if you want it, for yourself, it's definitely better to run the report. And it's not too difficult. It may be a little more difficult if you have a lot of budgets, but I'll show you, and hopefully it won't be so bad. So I'm going to cancel out of this because I don't really want to save what I put in, though I'm not sure if it will save. I'll go back in and check later. But I'm going to finish this out so I could get back to my main colleague homepage. And then I'm just going to type in the letters DWSR for Detail Worksheet Report. Then click on the magnifying glass. And again, we type in FY22. Click OK. And at first, you won't see anything. What you have to do is click on the first little field, and you will see that all of your budgets then appear. So if you don't see them at first because you have so many, then you can just click on that first field and they all fill in. If you do see them, then don't worry about it. So first things first, you click on that field to populate your little budgets, and then you scroll on down to the very important part where you print the justification notes. So everything else you can adjust as you need, but print justification notes you want to change from no to Y for yes, or you can type out the whole word. But you want to change that to yes so that when you have the report at the end, it has the numbers and then the justification for those right underneath. Of course, you can run this as many times as you want. So if you ran it accidentally without the justification notes, you can always come back in and run it again with the notes. So it's really not that bad. So once we have the justification notes set up, you just click Save and Update. And that just means it's updating the report to the next page. So it may take a little bit, depending on how many budgets you have, but the next page is actually about the output device. So by default, it says printer, which you would think is correct, but it's actually hold browse file output because there is no printer directly connected to Colleague. So if you leave it on printer spooler, it's not going to go anywhere. So if you change it to H for hold browse file output, that means you'll get to save it after it's run. So then you can, print it from there. But you definitely want to change this to H. And again, this is in the documentation. So if you forget, it is detailed there as well. And once you change that output device to H, you can just click Save because nothing else on there is really that necessary. Click Update again. And then this final page, again, you don't have to change anything. So just click Save and Update one more time. So it may take a little bit, but you can see a little status bar here of how long it's going to take to process, of how far it is in the process. And then once it is done, it will appear behind this little pop-up window, or just replace it entirely. It really depends. So you can see here that I have 41 pages. And then you can see at the very top of this page, I have the first of my budgets, so fiscal services. You can also see the GL account over here, the description of the line item, and we have our fiscal years labeled at the top. So it starts with 2018, then 2019, then 2020, and then this base is what we're looking at here. Oh, no, sorry, it's the 2021, 2022, the one with the actual year. So that is over here on the far right. And as you scroll down, you'll see that my justification notes did show up, and you can see there's a little J to the left of the GL number, indicating that there is a note. Even if I didn't print them, it would say there was a note. But since I did choose to print them, they show up right under here, indented under the relevant number. So that's kind of nice. There's also, because I had so many budgets, and if you have multiple, you'll see this as well. As you go through the pages, it puts a different budget on each page. So even if a budget goes onto multiple pages, it will page break for the next budget. So you never have 2 budgets on one page, which is super nice. So I'm going to go all the way back to page 1. And what you would do to actually save this is click Export PDF. You don't want to click Save As, even though it seems like you should be able to click that, because it'll make it an HTML file, which is just not really what you want. So I usually go to Export PDF, and this is my preferred format for the PDFs in Colleague, but you are welcome to change it to whichever of the 3 fonts you would like, whatever font size you prefer, and then the orientation. But I find that with the width of this report as it is, it's always nicer to have it in landscape so you have that space. And then font size 9 kind of keeps it all on one page, whereas anything larger, I mean, you might be able to get away with 10, but if you go larger than that, it might go off the page and then it gets awkward. So I usually just do it this way, and then you click Create PDF and you get that download button with the PDF ending, so you know that's what kind of file you're getting. So you click on Download, and it'll download it to your computer, and then I can open it up, and here it is. I can print that out if I like. The 41 pages is kind of a lot to print. But yeah, so each little bit of budget gets put on a different page for your convenience, and it's nice to have going into next year and also just going into the review period. So if you want to look it over with your budget reviewer, you can have the numbers right there instead of going into Colleague. But it's completely optional. I just think it's easier, especially if you're looking for your justification notes. If you do have them printed out here, it's so nice to just go back and look at what you requested. But that's just me. Totally up to you guys. So are there any questions about that you guys want to mention?
So Riley, if you click Save but do not click Update, what happened?
It does not save.
Oh.
Yeah, so the save always comes with an update. Whenever you click Save, you must update it so that it actually updates the page with the updated information. So if you click Cancel, it's going to cancel that save. And if you click Return, it's just going to bring you back to the editing page so you can continue editing before you save.
So save and update, they are the combination that could mean that you have to hit both.
Yes.
Okay.
Good question. Anybody else have anything?
Riley, it's Jess Fazio.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I missed one important step, and that was the step right before you were able to print off the PDF. It was the screen. It was the DWSR step.
Okay.
In that step, am I just hitting save and then going from there, or am I changing that execute in background mode? I'm sorry, everybody.
Oh,
You caught
yeah. No, don't worry about it. That last page with the execute in background mode, just leave it as is and click save and then update.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hit something. And
No problem. I don't think you'd break anything even if you did change it, but I'll be honest, I don't even know what it does. I just always keep it on N. So,
Okay.
but yeah, the only thing you need to change is the, oh, that actually brings up a great thing I didn't even mention. So thank you. If I go back into DWSR, there is something you can do if you don't want to print out a report of all of your budgets. If you only want a select few or a certain grouping, that's totally something you can do. So on this first page, when I go into DWSR, if I wanted to get rid of, say, the endowment budget from this report, I can click on the number 2 and then click delete and then whole group. So you want to delete the whole grouping of that field. So honestly, I'm not sure what would happen if you click delete field, but delete whole group just takes that right out of the equation. And it doesn't get rid of the budget per se, it just doesn't include it in your report. So if there were some you just didn't want to include, you would just click the number next to them, then click delete, and then whole group. So that first page, you can really kind of customize what you want in your report. Though if you have 5 pages of budgets, probably just worth it to do the whole report and then maybe export individual PDF pages. I'm not sure. But do know that whenever you go into DWSR, you do need to change that justification note setting every time. It does not hold. So you will need to come down here. You might have to scroll a little bit like I did, and then click into the field and type in yes. So just make sure you know that. And then as before, you would just click save and update. And this is the only other page you need to edit on. You just change that output device to H. And then everything else, the other page, you just click save and update, and then you get to that export page. So are there any other questions? Okay.
Riley, just to double check, this is Rick Hoffenberg. If we don't have the fiscal folder in our Google Drive, we write to the budget 2022. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And it might just look like your department name. I'm not sure if it'll have the numbers, but for me, it just had the department name. So you might just want to look for that. I am going to go back into Google Drive because I do want to show you where the documentation is as well. But for me, when I went into my shared with me section, if I had it sorted by default to share date, it should be towards the top. Like for me, it was right here. It was shared with me yesterday. So you should have gotten something shared with you around November 30th, because I think that's when it opened, and it might have been shared with you even before that. So keep that in mind if you're looking for a recent share date, if that helps answer the question.
Thanks. I'll email them if I'll look again. If I can't find it, I'll email. Thanks.
Yeah, perfect.
Riley, this is Fran. And just a hint, another way you can tell if it has the same name as your department, another way you can tell that it's the one you're looking for is that it will say that the owner is budget 2022.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Because I have plenty of folders from the last couple of years, and it helps to know which one is the right one. So yeah, definitely, like Fran said, make sure to keep that detail button open because it's the easiest way to know who's the owner. So just as a recap, if you click on that I button, it opens up that little pane, and then the first icon is usually the owner, and it'll say so-and-so is the owner, and then it's also shared with me and Pat. And it'll also say when it was shared, so it'll have those details. I did want to mention though where the budget documentation is. I think I did send it out in an email, but I did want to bring attention to it. It is just a folder called budget documentation, and I'm pretty sure you can search for it in Google Drive. I think I did that right. So if you typed in budget documentation, for me, the folder comes up because I own it. Hopefully it comes up for you as well. But I would just be able to click on that folder, and it includes helpful things like the FAQs, the timeline for this year, the checklist, which is super nice, and also includes the due dates for inputting budget numbers and for reviewing. And then we have our budget request documentation with all the little details that I've mentioned today. We also have the monitoring your budget in the portal documentation from November. And then we also have this nice little salary budget summary by object. So if you wanted to look at this a little more, if you weren't sure what actually qualifies as each object code for the salaries, that's what this is for. So nice to look at. And all right there in the documentation. And if you need it, I can send you a link to it because it is supposed to be shared with all of the people in the Marywood University group, which should be all of us. Anyone with an maryu.marywood.edu email should have access to this. But if you do not, I can send you the link, and then you'll have it in your shared with me section, and you'll be good to go. Are there any other questions I can help with? Or Carolyn?
Could I ask one other question? This is Rick again. Is there a list somewhere for each budget listing who the owner is and who the alias is, just so we don't have to start from scratch?
Right. I don't have one. Carolyn might actually, because I think she individually shared things with everybody. So Carolyn, do you have an answer?
Yeah, each year it starts all over again. So I'm currently just adding new aliases as we speak.
Okay, so even the owners start. There are no official
the
owners.
owner, you're still the owner. You've been the owner. You and Dave.
Okay, because I remember in past years they had trouble listing two owners, and each year we kind of figure out. So
that's
each
the
year we
reason
kind of
why.
figure out, well, maybe for this budget I'll be the owner. For this budget you'll be the owner. For this budget, you know, our theater director will be the owner. And I
pretty
just
sure they're all in your name, Rick, and I think I have Romines as the alias. I will double check this afternoon and let you know. But yeah, only one person can be the owner. So that's the reason for alias, aside from letting somebody else help you with your budgeting.
That makes sense. Thanks so much for checking. That would be incredibly helpful. So that we
No
know.
problem. I'll get back
Yeah.
to you this afternoon. Okay, Rick?
Thanks so much. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So does anyone have any other questions? I'm currently going through the chat, and because I couldn't open it, thank you, Carolyn, for answering people. I don't know why I couldn't open it.
Oh, you bet. I have another conference at 2, so does anybody have any more budgeting questions?
I got one.
And
This is,
Fran, I'll get that for you this afternoon also, okay, Fran? Is it only the bay leaf?
Yeah, it's only the bay leaf.
That's the only one you have?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Riley.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And I'm just looking at the chat real quick to see if there's anything I missed. I'm sorry I didn't respond immediately, but Carolyn pretty much handled everything there. The main thing to note with BAAS is that it's only for aliases. So if you're the budget owner, just skip it. And in the documentation, it says as well, if you are the budget owner, just skip this alias section and go straight to OWLI, RWLI. So you should just be able to zoom right on through. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If anyone has any questions, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I have one. So new budget owner myself, and I probably didn't receive that email you were referencing from Pat Castigliani.
Okay.
Because of that. So what I just did was email the FY 2022.
Oh, the budget 2022? Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So I'll need access. I'm assuming they're the ones that are gonna reach out to me, right? So okay.
Exactly.
And then you said that this is gonna be available for reference on YouTube later on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Once this recording's over, I'll let it process, and then I'm going to update it onto YouTube and kind of break it down into different sections so you could hop around as you need. But yeah, definitely. I will put it up on YouTube and send it out to everybody here and everyone who requested a recording, and probably honestly out to MW admin in case I miss anybody.
Okay.
So
The last thing you said that you were gonna add all of those on the Google Drive. I don't think I'm on that either. Just wondering.
oh, okay. For the shared folder.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that would also be a budget 2022, unless you're talking about the documentation, because then I can just include that in the chat right here so everyone has it.
Yeah,
I'll do that right now.
Here, because I'm looking at things that were shared with me, and not many things are there. So I just figured I'd let you know.
Sure.
And for everyone that doesn't know me, hi, I'm Raul. I'm the new director of Military and Veteran Services. Sorry, I didn't get to introduce myself earlier. So I'm the newest of the new, the fresh leaf, straight out of the tree. But nice to meet
Nothing
you.
wrong with that.
Well, don't worry, your Google Drive will get filled pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Outstanding.
without warning.
I'm hoping that way I won't be completely lost in the woods. But yeah, all right. So is it okay if at any other point any of us are lost, can we contact you with any more questions?
Yeah, of course. I prefer if you email the help desk, because now we have it so that any help desk emails automatically get made into tickets. So
Okay.
if I'm off for some reason, it'll still, like, someone will be able to say, oh, she's off, so she won't be able to, get in touch with you. But I don't think I have any time off between now and Christmas, so get your questions in. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so you can contact me either at 2581, or if I'm working from home, my email is just my last name, kowaleski@marywood.edu, and we can either have a Google Meet or a Zoom and just kind of figure it out from there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, I put the link for the shared drive folder in the chat. So if you click on that, it automatically adds it to your shared with me section. So if you don't have it, click on that link and it'll add it to your Google Drive. You should be good. Are there any other questions before I stop the recording? All right, we're stopping it. So goodbye, virtual people.
Thank you.